So I thought I'll discuss something related to this content-based instruction, but I won't be dealing with any theoretical framework within which one has to work with content-based instruction. I mean, all of us do that in our classrooms, and this webinar, I hope, will give you some more input into the methods in which we can fruitfully carry out our classroom tasks and develop learning materials, or maybe modify the curriculum as such or the syllabus as such. So I'll be talking about sustainable development goals, which are given to us by the United Nations, and by 2042 we are supposed to achieve almost all of them. So these goals are very important for the humanity. And my entire session, it won't be an interactive session till the end, and then we can have some discussion, because I would like to give you some input so that you can think along, and then we can have the discussion at the end. So there are two major premises on which I base this particular talk. And the first one, as you can see, even if the learners whom we teach in our classrooms are so proficient in English, if they are not socially conscious about, and they don't have this faculty of conscience operating for getting engaged in any kind of disasters that is happening around them, then the entire point of education is missing. Not philosophy, but this is actuality. Then with the Government of India document NEP 2020, we have heard this phrase quite a lot of time: holistic development. It repeats, it recurs so many times in the document if you have gone through NEP 2020. So it emphasizes the role of holistic development, social and emotional skill, the need to cultivate 21st century skills, and to endorse the global citizenship. So when these are given to us by the very recent policy that people have researched on, and it doesn't mean that it is something very new. It has been there, and the essence has been captured from various documents. So when we are known to these, or when we know that these are the elements that we should impart in our educational practice, are we really doing it? So when we talk about education, employability is something that comes quite close to it, because people are not just going, it's unlike the Greek and ancient Indian traditions where people just go in search of knowledge. No, now people have agendas, right? All of us have some kind of goal set in our mind. So when we become part of the education system, we think about earning our daily bread. That means employability is always part and parcel with education. And with multinational companies and trade and commercial opportunities crossing any kind of geographical boundaries, the positioning of employability is very crucial in the education sector, especially in the higher education sector. It doesn't mean that we think about all these problems only at the higher education sector. No, we have to start it from the roots. You have Malayalam proverb saying that there's no point in giving any kind of sustenance after every developmental stage is over. No, we have to start it from the beginning. So addressing local and global issues and solving problems are also part of somebody's employability skill. So it's not something that a learner has got good grades, say outstanding kind of academic performance, but the person fails to demonstrate that social responsibility and social and emotional skills during an interview or during a group discussion. The person is not selected for that particular job. So these are all important aspects along with cross-cultural communication. So that is a premise that is closely related to what I have mentioned in the previous slide. So what is global citizenship? Global citizens are critical thinkers, socially conscious and responsible citizens. They will have awareness of global and local issues. They will be empathetic and thinking citizens, curious and lifelong learners. This is something that we need to endorse again and again in our classrooms, because our students have to ask us questions and we have to engage ourselves with questions. One person who is always, who used questioning as a teaching methodology was Socrates. if you remember, because he never used to give answer to a question. He always used to give a question as a response to a question, so that the students will go on and find out, refer to various human resources, or maybe to the books or whatever, scriptures, and they will find out the answers and come back. So such kind of Socratic seminar is absent in our society right now. But questioning is something that leaves people curious and that makes people lifelong learners. So we have to, as teachers, as responsible teachers and researchers, we need to find a method in which we can incorporate this questioning tactics into practice, so that the students remain curious, motivated, and critically alert about things that are happening around them. Active partakers in societal change. Whatever mini kind of change is happening in our society, are the students willing to be a part of that change? Are they able to respond to some kind of social issue that is surging up? Is a question that, being teachers, being ethically sensitive teachers, we should ask to ourselves, and we should posit this question in front of the students as well. Continuously responding to the changes in their social system. So this continuity is very important. We are all trained to be teachers, or maybe we have the, we say that teaching runs in my blood. So we are all tuned towards being teachers. But is it a continuing kind of process, or is there a saturation point somewhere? Both for the teachers and for the learners, that saturation point could be there. There is a stagnant kind of moment in learning. So when it happens about your own subject specific learning in classroom, think about the social responsibility paradigm in which the students will have to work. It will be difficult if the teacher is not continuously engaging. I'm not putting a lot of burden on the shoulder of the teacher. I'll tell you how I deal with things, and I'm not very sure about your level of learners. Like, you might be teaching lower primary students, or higher secondary students, or tertiary level students. I'm not very sure about that. But when you listen to me, just try to pitch it up at the right level that you are engaging with or at. Then ultimately they need to be bias breakers. They can't be prejudiced, they can't be biased in their judgments, they can't be judgmental in that sense. I hope you get me. So that bias breaking is one aspect of asserting your global citizenship. These are all expected out of our learners. And how are we trying to impart this kind of an education within all sorts of limitations that we have got as teachers? We've got fixed benches and desks. Maybe desks are not there. We have only blackboards or the green board. We don't have a smart board. And the classrooms might be in dilapidated condition, so the management might be very strict. You have the stress of syllabus to be covered. All these realities, we have all these realities within this strange kind of a reality, but very, very true kind of a reality. How are we going to be educators who are sound enough to impart global citizenship? This is a question that we need to continually ask to ourselves. Now, this is the question that we will be dealing with hereafter. How can we incorporate sustainability dialogues in language classrooms? So when you think about it, that sustainability dialogue or the sustainable development goal itself becomes the content area. So now you need to rationalize the content-based language instruction in this paradigm. Okay. So when I talk about sustainable development goal, you need to think about it that way. So in my classes, I teach tertiary level students, BTech students, and PG students. But let me, my case in point is BTech students who are 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. Not 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. So within this age group, how am I imparting this sustainability dialogues, or how am I getting them engaged in this kind of sustainability dialogues? I'll give you some examples from my own professional practice. Also, some theoretical foundations to it, not theory as such, but you will see. So when you think about such kind of dialogues, there is a lot of interdisciplinarity that comes in. You know what is interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity and all. So you know that now the new document which we have to follow to a great deal talks about crisscrossing the boundaries between different disciplines. So me being an English teacher can collaborate with somebody from anthropology or from sociology or even from computer science. And when I join with a computer science teacher, we might be thinking of developing some apps for language learning. So such kind of research work is plenty. And when you think about the reality of the classroom, the computer science teacher can be quite handy in assessing the content area that the learners are actually being exposed to. So I used to have project works where I give some topics like make a plan for an innovative product that could be helpful to the rural folk. So the students will think about it, and obviously they are computer science students, very smart students. They try to trick me. I don't have the content knowledge in that sense, because if they start talking about coding and all, it is Greek and Latin for me. So at that point, I get the help from a colleague from the computer science engineering department. He or she comes with me to the classroom. When they make the presentation, when the students make the presentation, I'll be evaluating the language content, and the other teacher from CSE department will be evaluating the content, the content part of it, whether they are making sense. And he or she will be able to ask them questions based on the theories that they are positing, or the coding that they are doing, or the kind of associations that they are making. So this way, I as an English teacher collaborate with the department of computer science. Similarly, different kind of work can be done. And if this interdisciplinarity comes within various fields of humanities, that becomes kind of more easy an affair for us, easier an affair for the English teachers. So teaching should actually go beyond the mere teaching of the LSRW skills. One problem with ELT is that we still talk about the development of LSRW grammar and vocabulary all the time. And that makes people feel so not interested in this thing. See, this person has researched in how vocabulary could be taught through newspapers, and there'll be another PhD thesis which will be coming, like how vocabulary can be taught through songs, or how grammar can be taught through stories. So what is so big kind of a difference about all these things? These are all replication research in a sense. So what newness is there? So one newness that we can bring into our classroom is through the through the wise use of content in our classrooms. So from other disciplines such as science, technology, art, history, archaeology, and the like, if we can bring in some content, depending on the transportable identity of the students, that means the students, if they can associate their identity with that. Identity doesn't mean that they have to be trained in that particular arena. It's just their familiarity. Some of them will be so much into cricket, so getting some segments from cricket, you people will be doing it. But then when you think about the discipline as such, then it makes a big difference. If you even if it is an English for specific purpose context where you will be teaching engineering students, if you bring something from history, sometimes it will be very interesting for them. And if there is a slight linking with what they are doing, for example, you might know this person called John Pennyquick. We must, I assume that quite a lot of population here is from Kerala, so you know about Mulla Periyar. So if you browse, you will find, you will know who is John Pennyquick. And in my beta classes, I talk about, or I give a passage about John Pennyquick and ask them about the engineering practices. See, there's a lot of humanitarian issues being discussed when we are talking about John Pennyquick. At the same time, they are viewing it from an engineer's point of view. And there are some people who can think about it from the person who comes from Kambam and Theni area. There are people who come from Kerala who discusses it slightly differently. So a lot, see, everything is very political. Everything is very political. Language is very political. A language classroom is also very political. So therefore, I stressed or I emphasized the use of all these methods in a wise manner, where the teacher has some kind of control when there is absolute democracy in the classroom, even when there is absolute democracy in the classroom. So always take it with a pinch of salt, but you need to be the people who are making the change if you really want to get them engaged in the social construction process, or the construction of the society in a very positive manner. If they have to get engaged in that, then we need to be the pioneers of the change. There is no other way. Now we talk about humanities of crisis. So when we discuss how different disciplines react to global and local issues, you can see that English language teaching in India is one, I stress, in India is one segment or one population that does not contribute much to this humanities of crisis. Literature does its job. Anthropology and sociology do their jobs, but ELT as a segment is not responding much. So integrating content about global disasters, global challenges, are one way in which ELT can actually, in practice, respond to these things. And don't think that I am the only one who does things and it doesn't get reflected. That is not the case. When we all try to do something, if a slight change can be felt in your classroom by one or two students, that is very fruitful. Even that makes it a big effort and very successful kind of an effort. So creating and adapting materials based on various global issues and encouraging such kind of discourses within the classroom will help us quite a lot. Using various audio, video, and print materials, going for an ongoing content development along with the students. I had students who were willing to bring in materials from their own culture, their own kind of backgrounds and all, which makes it very interesting, especially if it is a multicultural kind of setting. Even if it is not multicultural, you think about it, you give some context to them, to the students, and ask them to, now information is at the fingertip for most of them. So if they are technologically privileged, they will be able to bring in all sorts of information. Or you can localize it rather than making it globalized. Even consider the local issues and then make them socially conscious about some things that happen around them. We are walking into the paradigm of experiential learning. There is no doubt in that. That perception, thinking, feeling, and acting, all that becomes all the more crucial at this point of time. Because if we are going to just reproduce certain ideas or ideologies that we have learned long back without knowing the change kind of scenario, then there is no point in any kind of educational theories or educational practices. There has to be some kind of change, and these changes have to be adaptable and on a continual kind of mode. So we need to give the learners opportunities for engaging in problem solving skills and more real life oriented projects and assignments. Rather than asking them to write an essay, you have to make sure that there is a challenge for them and they cognitively engage with that challenge, not only in linguistic terms, but also in terms of its social value. So when you do that, you are actually being an ethical teacher who is very much doing her or his duty to the world as well as to the classroom. So we are just stepping out of those boundaries that whether you are an English teacher, you are supposed to teach English. We can actually incorporate a bit of arts into our classroom. I'm a teacher who practices theater in my classroom, and theater activities are so great for language learning. And it just makes a lot of changes in the attitude of the students. Then the collaborations through which we can encourage a lot of learning has to be emphasized. So when we do some kind of social topics, the students are compelled to talk to each other or talk to somebody else outside the classroom or inside the classroom, or maybe to get some information from you as well. So that information gap itself makes them good collaborators. And collaboration is one aspect or one 21st century skill that is quite mandatory these days, because we can't be just crabs. One person tries to escape and the other person pulls the person down. No, that cannot work anymore. We have to be quite warm in our collegiality. We have to be very warm in our collaborations too. So we can explore all these areas, but as the conference type conference sub themes and notes go, not limited to any of these. But when United Nations proposed all these goals, you need to understand that quite a lot of things have been incorporated within these broad titles. So if you look at the fifth goal, gender equality, the 13th goal, climate action, and 16th one, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, these are the three goals that I usually take in my classroom. Not because the other ones are very difficult or they are not worthy of doing it, but these are the things that I found that the student should immediately know. Therefore, I just went through every single possibility, and I started taking the fifth one, 13th one, and 16th one, and it works really well. I'll show you one example very soon. So now if you think about the possible activities for all these things in ELT classroom, see, I'm very much aware that you people knew the philosophy of education, and I don't have to tell you that you have to be ethical, you have to be an inspiration for the students. I don't have to say all these things. But what I'm trying to give here is just a way in which the practice can actually manifest. From the theoretical realm, we can pull it down to the real classroom, face the challenges, mitigate whichever we can negotiate with, or eliminate things that we cannot do. See, there are things that are humanly possible within all sorts of restricted territories or boundaries. Whatever we could achieve, we will try for that. So one possible thing that you can do is to find out about different cultures. These are some examples to increase their cross cultural sensitivity and cross cultural communication. Food, festivals, rituals, etiquettes, all these things. You can even ask them to talk about netiquettes in that is quite universal, right? So we can even talk about them. And cultural etiquettes are also very interesting. I remember when I was studying in 5th standard or 6th standard, after getting introduced to English, we had something about good manners and how different it was in England and in India. Because when in India, usually when we go into a house, we leave our footwear outside, and in England, if you do that, that's an insult. So being a 6th standard or 7th standard student, I remember how that was giving me a culture shock, because that was the first time I got introduced to some cultural differences like that. Now with YouTube and other social media platforms and all these information being available at such high speed, the students are well informed about it. But we cannot just dismiss this possibility of students being aware of it, but they do not have enough sensitivity to handle the change. I'm a person who witnesses it on a daily basis here. So they do not have the cultural competency. They just are aware of the cultural differences, how to go about it, how to manage linguistic diversity, how not to be prejudiced on someone who is from a different culture, maybe with a different complexion. They have no idea. The creamy layer student I'm talking about. Think about others. Then find out stereotypes in society, biases, and discussions on breaking the bias. This could be gender biases, caste-based biases, so many things. So one thing that the students immediately jump when we give this is about reservation. And if you listen to them, you will go mad, because they have very strong kind of points about it, which lacks any kind of historical reading at all. So it's a teacher's duty to induce that kind of critical reading skills also among the students when they claim that, yes, I'm very well aware of it. Don't think that these things can be practiced only at the tertiary level or only at the secondary level. At various levels, this sensitization is happening. If you remember, there was a newspaper article about the Karnataka textbook, the primary class textbook, featuring a father who cooks and a mother who is a police officer getting ready to go to work. So, with that picture, it communicates a lot of things. You think about a child whose father is a wife beater, and there is a change that is happening. There is a process that is happening in the head of the child when he or she sees this picture. So, it's very important. Locate an environmental issue and find a practical solution for that. So there is challenge, there is cognitive challenge, there is content based challenge, and then comes the language through which they express. The mode and modality are very important. How they express, is it through speaking or is it through writing that they express it? It's very important, and that's our primary duty, we think. But I am redefining, I'm trying to just tell you that it's high time we redefine our role as a language teacher. And we need to be a teacher of culture, we need to be an anthropologist, we need to step into various different shoes. I'm not asking you to change the discipline, but we need to be the inducers of some kind of change. For that, we need to change our own practice and do citizenship journalism, documentaries, short films if they are technologically privileged. But if they are not technologically privileged, if they don't have access to all the gadgets, and if their cognitive level is, if you think their cognitive level is quite low for all those things, you can come up with realia, which means you can come up with pictures or you can come up with newspaper articles, something that can be discovered from the immediate surroundings, and then work with that. We should never underestimate the power of imagination and creativity that the students have. At the same time, we should not overestimate their cultural competency as well. This is why I said take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not talking about a ghetto, I'm talking about the reality of today's language classrooms. Infographics are very useful ones, documentaries are very useful, podcasts again, if you can make them listen to it, and documentaries, if you can actually make them watch it inside the classroom, that will be better. Because if you flip the classroom with these things, it only goes with the privileged students, like technologically sound students. Otherwise there could be some problems. Infographics, of course, you can either make it in print or maybe show it on slide, whatever mode. Blogs are good. Memes, movies, short films, songs, all these are props for incorporating these sustainability dialogues. If we had time, I would have shown you one short video which I used to get them think about breaking the bias and talking about glass ceilings and other things with the tertiary level learners, of course. Now, yeah, yesterday was 1 year of the Ukraine war, so I think this falls in context. Topics that we can think about, not limited to these, but I'm just giving you some input which we immediately need to think about. Climate action, poverty, hunger, food, sustainable cities, gender equality, quality education, culture shock, violence, environmental pollution. See, our students are here at NIT, our students are technologically very, very sound. But I was at one point very much surprised during the online era that we had for a brief period. Um, Kevin Carter was a name that was so foreign for them. They didn't know who was Kevin Carter, but that's okay. Not everybody knows Kevin Carter. But the picture was quite famous, right? Even when we didn't have, I'm sure Professor Lal would agree with me, even when we didn't have all these social media revolutions like 20 or 30 years ago, we all were very much familiar with this picture of Kevin Carter, where the vulture is waiting for the child to die and to eat it. And what happened to Kevin Carter after that, all that we were very much familiar with, all information being available at the fingertips. The students nowadays are not aware of all these crucial problems. With one picture, I could talk to them, not that I talked, but I could induce a discussion for an hour. So simple pictures, or small little things, or just a story can actually get you talk about things and get them engage in discussions. So role plays can be used, interviews can be used. I used to ask them to interview their parents, especially their mothers, when it comes to gender equality. They had to frame 10 questions. So my linguistic purpose is to teach them the questioning pattern, right? How do they place do, does, is. That questioning pattern is the linguistic purpose that I have in my mind as a teacher. But the content that I have is to get them familiarized with the gender violence that passively happens within their domestic boundaries. So they have to formulate questions, and it when they go for the questioning, 10 questions are prepared prior to they approach their parent for the interview. But then through the discussion, they have to come up with more questions. So that spontaneity, that cognitive spontaneity is also being assessed there. Sensitive information, if they don't want to reveal it to me, they used to say that, but again they have to say that in English. It doesn't mean that I never use their Telugu or their Tamil or Hindi in my classroom. When there were moments where they wanted to switch to their language, I allowed them to do that, and they were feeling free to do that. Quite a lot of language transference occurred, or switching occurred during all these activities. Now, I'm going to discuss, yeah, I'll be finishing very soon with this small task. So I'm a person who is engaged in classroom research. So when I teach, there'll be some very revealing kind of moments. I feel like, yeah, this is a researchable kind of problem. Or this is interesting. If I document it and if I publish it, people will get benefited. Or if I talk about it, people will get benefited. So if there is a discovery kind of moment like that, I start a mini kind of research there. So in a few years ago, this research has happened. Two questions I had in my mind. How does an ESP, English for Specific Purpose teacher, embed aspects of climate action? Because at that time I was working with SDG 13 and sustainable practices into the course plan. So at the university where I used to work at that point of time, we had a clear course plan. So we had to do with presentation skills, report writing, SOP writing, email writing, all technical kind of writing. I was teaching them that, and incorporating climate action into that was slightly challenging. And I wanted to assess how fruitful these green lessons in developing competencies of the learners. So whatever I have talked to you till now, I'm giving you an example of how I practiced it and how I documented it as a researcher, practiced as a teacher and documented as a researcher, which I think will help you to do classroom research hereafter. I'm being very positive. Now the participants and setting, 60 engineering students. Yes, I had big classroom. Half of them not interested in their own life, then think about English. Age between 18 to 20. Private engineering university in India. So, we are always monitored. The deans will go around for walk and to monitor the teaching and learning processes through the window or through the door, just like anywhere else. ESP course titled English for Effective Communication for a semester. I was the teacher researcher. I had 7 years of teaching experience at that time, and 3 months duration for this entire study. It was before the virus came to us, or at least we knew that the virus existed. Procedure was this. I had background discussion with my learners to identify what they think about environmental crisis. Okay. Then the actual intervention. Intervention means my classroom interactions with the students, my teaching. So I address their language issues, I gather data from the responses to the classroom tasks that I have given to them. Then after this entire teaching got over for the semester, I had a discussion with them to identify any kind of changes in their attitude. So I corroborated that uh, post teaching data with the background discussion data I had in the beginning. Then after 8 months, I went back to them. Some people didn't even want to talk to me. Then I had a discussion with them and I analyzed that data too. So now we will see how this background discussion went. Um, Not very positive about anything. Most of the learners were saying that they can't do anything about it. It's all, development is very much crucial for any kind of country, especially for a country like India. To make our financial position very sturdy, we need to have more factories and all. Emissions cannot be helped, and one individual cannot do anything about it, because reducing plastic or glaciers melting are all things that a teenager cannot do anything about. You look at the phrasing of it, he was very good in saying that he cannot do anything and he's not interested in anything. 54 learners out of the 60 learners believed that environmental issues could be addressed and resolved at the state level, nation level, or at the global level. And this bit in quotes is from one particular learner. So only 6 learners had some positive aspects towards yes, we can do something. Everybody else, so think about me, I was a person who believed that one person can make at least a slight change, and I was with 54 learners, that's a majority, who believed that nothing can be done. And how did we manage this? The slides are not moving. Yes. So now the intervention stage. So I planned it properly. There is teaching component where I taught them skills and sub skills of group discussion. Then there was activity 1, where learners in groups actually had discussions and interactions with, they had discussions within the classroom and discussions with their peers outside the classroom, and over the telephone they could talk to anybody. So there were no no barriers. Excuse me. There were no barriers to any kind of interactions. So actually they could do so much in the classroom, and they could collect opinions from outside, and they collected people's reaction towards climate change and their perceptions about their involvement in being a part of climate action. Then the second teaching component synthesized information and had writing short formal reports, and report writing features were also taught in between. Then we had the second activity, which generates an operational plan based on the data collected, write a report, discuss, evaluate, and modify the action plan. So they did in their small groups. Okay, 10 groups or 6 groups. I think 10 people and 6 groups. Yes. So in their groups, they discussed the plans, and then they presented, others suggested certain things, and I suggested certain things. We browsed together, made changes, and they modified their action plan to solve that particular local problem that they found. Then presentation skills were taught. Formal language use was taught, and then they made a presentation based on the modified reports and the discussion points that they had in the class. So this was the entire intervention that went for that particular segment of the course. It doesn't mean that this was the only thing that I taught. I had other skills to teach. All of them were taught, and this was kept to the end of the semester. So for that entire period of 3 months, occasionally I had this kind of a teaching going on. So I taught them report writing, presentation skills, and some other discussion skills as well, like debate and other stuff, including, being incorporated into all these activities. Now the classroom tasks and focus areas. We had discussions, generating action plans, evaluating action plans, report writing, and academic presentations. And you can see there were content area focused, and there were language, communication, and other skills, employability skills, or 21st century skills that were focused. So this table will sum up the kind of data that I gathered, or the kind of content that we discussed in the classroom. I'm not going to read out everything. It's pretty much telling. In discussion, we had negotiation, persuasion, synthesis of synthesizing the information, polite phrases to be used in discussions, then seek negotiation again, problem solving, critical thinking skills, creativity, all sorts of things were discussed, and nuances of academic writing, where stance marking, hedging, signposting, coherence and cohesion, all those things were discussed as part of the language syllabus. But everything was being done towards this content that I gave them in the beginning, or I helped them to generate from the beginning. This was the teaching circuit. The teacher choosing a few contextually significant social issues, which is climate action here. Perception analysis, where I identified learners' perceptions on the chosen issues. Locating single pertinent issue, which is like, okay, they have so many issues to talk about: plastics, reuse, this, that, and all. Ganga getting polluted. They even thought about getting a Ganga cleaning up kind of project, which is highly impossible, right? So we had to really narrow it down to something manageable, something something workable, something operational. Choosing appropriate teaching materials, integrating ESL, which is English for English as a second language, and SEL, social and emotional learning skills, and 21st century skills into that framework. Identifying the nature of activities, pair, group, or individual. That was in mutual discussion. We had a discussion, like I talked to the students, and they had some suggestions. They wanted to work in pairs, they wanted to work in trios, they wanted to work as big groups, whole class. All those decisions were made at what stage we are going to implement it. So a lot of learner autonomy was there, in a sense. Carry out the activities of teaching, mentoring, and fine tuning. Then finally, evaluating, grading the learners, evaluating the teaching plan, obtaining the learner feedback. This learner feedback is very important, because only then you will know whether you might be thinking about yourself as an ideal teacher. Okay, something that you have done in an extraordinary way. But whether that is fruitful or not, or how it has been perceived by the students, is something that we also need to know. Therefore, taking a learner feedback is very much important, and evaluating them and giving them periodical feedback is also very important. So there's a lot of burden on the teacher. If we want to go like a normal mundane kind of routine, yeah, it is fine to remain the way we are, not taking up any kind of challenges. But there are plenty of things, abundance of things that we can actually do in our classrooms. I'll be concluding now. This was the learning circuit. They think and discuss in groups, negotiate and generate new ideas, synthesize the ideas and critically evaluate the ideas, write the report and make the presentation, negotiate with the comments from the peers and from the teacher, then again think and discuss. So the circuit will go on. So that is why I said there is a continuum. It's not that at one point it gets stagnated. The discussion topics may differ. So we took climate change, then the next round it might be gender, something else, or another aspect of climate change. So that loop is endless and it will run. Don't think that I didn't have any challenges, or I was talking about some paradise where I could just do all sorts of innovations on my own. No. Student strength in the class was really high, 60 students, very difficult. So how I managed was through grouping them, and I was walking around the classroom. Fortunately, I was lucky enough to get a big hall without benches and desks, but we had chairs. So that logistics was facilitated, which was good. And if you go through the document, you can see that there was time constraints. Then lack of infrastructural resources, absence of smart classes, audio video support. Sometimes we didn't have that. So I used to carry laptops, sometimes send the class leader or representative the video prior to the class, and we used to watch it in the class, or at least make sure that one group has one laptop and all the 10 of them watch it together, things like that. Whatever we could do, we managed. And Troubleshooting is always part of a teacher's life. Then we had heterogeneous classrooms. I had Telugu speakers who could not really get anything that I was talking about or their peers were talking about. I had public school educated students or people from Abu Dhabi or Dubai who were very fluent in their English, educated in American schools. So that disparity I managed through peer collaboration, a bit of mentoring and positive reinforcement. Inadequate feedback time, of course. I had to travel 1.5 hours one way and the way back too. So this 3 hours of traveling, I used to evaluate their work and give them feedback. My throat is really bad. I was a non-stop speaker for the past 1 week. So this is the toll. Now the results, if you look at the background discussion, they had this very negative kind of an aspect. Only agencies with regulatory power could do something. Financial cost is involved in any actions, okay? But after the intervention, they revealed that a lot of people were very positive about their roles in environmental crisis and action plans, and they understood that without even spending any kind of money, we could be very much sensitive towards the environmental crisis and make that small little change that one can make. The delayed discussion is even interesting. 5 learners didn't want to talk to me. 17 learners, a change was there towards living more responsibly with minimum damage being done to the environment. Look at the number, only 17. 15 people said they do not sustain any interest but attempt to be sensitive towards environmental issues whenever they can. So it's based on their convenience. They try not to litter it, but it doesn't mean that they don't buy all the plastic goods. They don't stop buying it. They are sensitive, though, to not to throw it wherever they want. Discussions and awareness raising on continuous basis is required was the comment made by 20 learners, because they say that if such kind of engagement is continuously happening, then yes, we might have this sustenance done. And 3 learners compromised their environmental actions. It was not convenient. No more discussions. Therefore, we didn't have anything. So we live like how we used to live. So that 5 plus 3 was disappointment, but some hope from at least 17 learners who are still practicing and 15 learners who may practice it if there is some kind of continuous engagement with these things. So I won't spend time here. Clear perception change was there for many of them. These are the sample responses that they have given. I think I'll share the slides with you people if you're interested, so you can go through it at your own convenience. So I understood that there was increased learner participation, motivation, cooperation, collaboration in classroom tasks. Learner chosen materials were plenty towards the end. They were very meticulous in planning and bringing it in and checking with me before the class and all. And in a self-financing kind of institute, students who come from real good academic and cultural kind of background, coming and approaching an English faculty for such kind of discussions is not very common. If you people are familiar with the context, you will understand what I'm saying. People usually who are engineering students, their main focus is to get good grades and get placements and startups and other things. They are never bothered about many other things that we as arts and humanities people discuss. So there were students who were flocking together to come and discuss the materials that they wanted to use in the classroom, because they think that it is very useful and it is connected to what the discussions were in the classroom. So that is a big change, I would say. Critical thinking was high. Problem solving skills was much better. And then one thing I understood about their language proficiency was they were like quite calm down in their articulation. So their anger, their anguish kind of attitude, everything came down to a bit of, they were quite slow in, not slow, their pace of delivery, their pace of pitching their arguments came down quite a bit, which shows some kind of linguistic sensitivity. They were becoming more patient. But I didn't do a psychometric analysis of all these things. I just had their spoken data to be analyzed, where I found so many good fillers and many pleases and thank you, um, many times seeking excuses when they have to be sought. Earlier they never used to care. So such kind of peculiarities were there in their discussion pattern, and in their presentations they were using a very formal kind of language, and the content was, because they knew the content, the fluency was much better, and they spoke for more time compared to the first kind of rounds of discussions that we had before this experiment. They were very brief. They didn't have much to talk about. Now that it's entirely their intellectual product, they have a lot to talk about, which means as a teacher of language, I have a lot to assess as well. Now, some suggestions for all of us. Um, Make it a habit to write a personal note every day, a diary entry, a letter, some kind of write up about a social or emotional concern. I mean, I'm being very very skeptical about what I'm saying right now, because I don't know how you will get time and all. But doing this will really help you to generate a portfolio that shows you how you progressed as a teacher, at least. Okay, have deeper discussions in class beyond the syllabus. Projects and assignments that involve interaction and collaboration must be fostered instead of essay writing on a given topic. Ask them to interview someone and sum up the discussion. Activities that enable more learner interaction and collaboration, that lead to learn to build tolerance and peace, calmness, and all. Team building, yeah. Encourage them to volunteer for educational or other socially relevant projects. Bring that culture into the classroom and to the institution if you can. See, I'm not saying it without practicing it. I was a person who always believed in campus connect programs. So I used to take my students out for social outreach activities with the help of with a proper documentation and certification from the institution, and make them understand the local culture, how the students are struggling in classrooms. And the CSE students used to teach them some basic computer stuff or basic mathematics to the students at government schools. So these are things that we can, as teachers, um, initiate in our classrooms. And getting a pen pal, global networking. Teachers can, or students can have pen pals, but this again, take it with a pinch of salt, I would say, because it's very difficult to control this social media interaction. So I wouldn't be a great fan of this, but for teachers there are good platforms. This is one such. I'll share the link in the chat box very soon. Penpal Global Educators Facebook group. If you join, you can see similar minded teachers bringing in amazing kind of tasks to the classrooms, and they make incredible kind of progress as professionals. It's really rewarding kind of an experience to be there. So these are things that we can actually work at. And Jacobs, Lee, and Amy, they say that as we seek to help our students develop their content knowledge, skills, and interest in learning, we also model and advocate an appreciation of the rights and responsibilities that each of us, even the youngest students, has as national and global citizens. This second, broader role as models of and advocates for citizenship might seem to be an added burden placed on us teachers' already overburdened shoulders. I told you that. However, by bringing the world into the classroom, we enliven the classroom by giving meaning and immediacy to what might otherwise seem mundane learning tasks. So whatever I have told you so far in the philosophical side, or maybe the practical side, has been summarized here by Jacobs, Lee, and Amy. And I will leave you with one single thought. This is from an Israeli educational psychologist, Haim Ginot. Wherever I go, I tell you, I'll tell people about this. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he leaves a note for the teacher. some of you might have been familiar with, but let me read it out for you. I am a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness: gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot by high school and college graduates. So, I am suspicious of education. My request is this: help your children become human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, or educated Aikmans. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. Thank you.